There's a reason why Inago Mong Lahat Sa Akin still hits hard almost 3 decades later. Inago Mong Lahat Sa Akin, also known as Harvest Home, isn't just about a love triangle or even sibling rivalry. It's about silence. What gets buried, what never gets said until it's far too late. On the surface, it tells the story of two sisters: Clarita, the one who left, and Jacinta, the one who stayed. But as you peel back the layers, what emerges is a devastating portrait of jealousy, generational trauma, and the unspoken horrors that quietly shapes a family. This is a film that never looks away, and by the end of it, neither can you. Let me tell you the story. In a quiet rural town, Jacinta lives a life of duty, caring for her ailing, increasingly unstable mother Almeda and working tirelessly in the fields. To outsiders, Jacinta is the perfect daughter: silent, obedient, and strong. But that silence hides a lifetime of repression, bitterness, and longing. Her husband, Peping, is cold and detached, physically present but emotionally absent. And yet Jacinta bears it all, even as the weight of the past gnaws at her in the corners of their home. After 10 years away, Clarita, Jacinta's younger sister, returns to the province with her husband, Joey. She left home to study in Manila and now returns only to settle land titles. But her homecoming stirs more than paperwork. Beneath the polite smiles are old wounds, never stitched. Clarita is everything Jacinta is not: confident, educated, and independent. The tension is immediate, further strained by the fact that Peping and Clarita once shared a past. It's a fact Jacinta is well aware of, even if no one dares speak it aloud. Things unravel slowly. Clarita's presence unsettles Almeda, especially when she finds buried love letters. Old correspondences between Clarita and Peping, letters that were never delivered. The letters Jacinta had hidden. When Joey inadvertently triggers Almeda's breakdown by revealing this, Jacinta lashes out, desperate to protect the fragile version of the past she's clung to. At the cemetery, everything collapses. In an emotionally raw confrontation, Jacinta finally speaks the unspeakable: that Clarita was a victim of their father's sexual abuse. It was Jacinta who killed him, pushing him in a moment of rage after discovering the truth, and that she covered it up, threatening her mother with blackmail if she ever revealed the real story. But in her confession is something deeper, darker, a twisted need for her father's love, even after death. Her jealousy isn't just about Piping or Clarita's education. It's about a lifetime of being invisible, of wanting to be chosen, of not being the one he hurt but the one he loved. Clarita, in shock, resolves to return to the city with Joey and to bring their mother with them for treatment. Before leaving, she tells Piping to take care of Jacinta. The film ends not with healing, but with hunting. Jacinta, now fully immersed in her delusions, dances in the rice fields, smiling, alone, suspended in a moment that only she understands. Peping watches silently. He says nothing, and that silence is the film's final blow. At first glance, Inago Mong Lahat Sa Akin looks like a quiet family drama about a homecoming, but underneath it is a story simmering with buried trauma, jealousy, and the generational damage that silence can cause. This film is, at its core, a devastating sister story, not because of rivalry, but because of the unequal ways two sisters carry the burden of abuse. Clarita escapes. Jacinta stays. Clarita becomes someone else. Jacinta becomes everything she was told to be. Jacinta is the product of neglect, emotional, sexual, and spiritual. She is constantly praised by the village as the ideal daughter, yet she is invisible to the people who matter most. Her loyalty is her prison. Her silence is not a virtue, it's survival. And when Clarita returns, beautiful, educated, married, it's not just old feelings that surface. It's the unbearable realization that everything I was told to endure, you were allowed to escape. Meanwhile, Clarita carries her burden, a truth so vile it forced her to run. Her father's abuse, her sister's complicity, and her mother's denial. And when she returns, she's not only confronted by the ghost of her childhood, but by a sister who has rewritten the past as a story of stolen love instead of stolen innocence. This is not just about trauma, it's about how families distort it, how abuse becomes a rumor, how silence becomes fate. How can a mother love God so deeply that she forgets to love her children? And perhaps the most haunting theme of all, what happens when a victim identifies with their abuser? Jacinta doesn't just cover up their father's crime. She longs to be chosen by him. Her jealousy isn't about Clarita stealing Peping. It's about Clarita always being the one who mattered.
Alam mo, sino nito lang laman ng isip niyo. Pero kulang pa ba yung pagmamahal na binigay ko? Basta hindi niyo ba ako talaga kayang mahalin?
Jacinta says in a flashback, a line that burns not just for what it means, but for how truthfully it reflects the twisted needs that trauma can create. In this film, forgiveness isn't offered, closure doesn't come, and healing isn't universal. Some wounds never scab, some homes never recover, and in the end, Jacinta's dance in the field isn't a moment of peace. It's a visual representation of someone who has finally left reality behind. This type of movie doesn't provide catharsis, rather, it causes discomfort when you sit with it. It poses the question, what do you do when the people you love are the ones who destroy you? And what happens when all that's left is memory, guilt, and a story no one wants to tell? There's something quietly suffocating about the way Inago Mong Lahat Sa Akin is shot. The visuals are rarely grand, but they don't have to be. Carlos Sigonreina directs the film with restraint, precision, and deep emotional undercurrents. The rural town feels almost too still, too calm, as if holding its breath for a secret to be spilled. Framing becomes psychological. Jacinta is often boxed in, surrounded by shadows or doorframes, a visual metaphor for her being trapped in her bitterness, duty, and repressed memories. Clarita, by contrast, is lit and shot with more openness, often in moments of reflection or silent horror. Their physical distance in frame mirrors their emotional chasm. What makes this even more personal is the casting of Armida Sigonreina as Almeda, the mother slowly unraveling under guilt and religious delusion. Behind the camera is her real-life son, director Carlos Sigonreina, whose sensitivity in directing his mother adds another layer of complexity. You can feel the care, the pain, the reverence, almost as if the film is wrestling with inherited trauma both on screen and off screen. And then there's the final shot, Jacinta, alone in the fields, dancing. It's haunting in its ambiguity. Is she free, or has she finally been broken? The camera doesn't give you an answer. It just lingers, still, patient, watching her fade into madness. Inago Mong Lahat Sa Akin was released in 1995, a time when Philippine cinema was transitioning. The commercial industry was saturated with love triangles and revenge plots, but films like this cut deeper, slipping past censorship with emotional intelligence and nuance. In Filipino culture, the family is sacred. The mother is a saint, the father a provider, and the children are expected to obey and endure. That's why the film hits so hard, because it doesn't just question that structure. It exposes what happens when silence is prioritized over truth. Arcadio's abuse of Clarita is never shown, but it echoes through every quiet stare, every repressed word, every breakdown. The real violence here is not in the act. It's in how the family covers it up. Jacinta's madness isn't just personal, it's cultural. She is the byproduct of a system that rewards martyrdom and punishes honesty. A daughter who does everything right and yet is never enough. Clarita, the quote-unquote favored one, escapes, but only physically. She still carries the trauma, the shame, and the need for closure. Religious devotion is also central. Almeda's character represents how faith can be a refuge, but also a prison. Her obsessive religiosity doesn't heal her, it paralyzes her. She clings to rosaries and rituals, but they don't stop the truth from bleeding out. And then there's the gender dynamic. Peping, the husband, is passive, more of a witness than a player in this family tragedy. It's the woman who holds the secrets, bear the burdens, and carry the emotional weight. But in the end, no one is saved. There are no heroes, just survivors. Films like this rarely get made anymore. Too quiet, too confronting, too real. But it's exactly this restraint that makes Inago Mong Lahat Sa Akin resonate almost 30 years later. Because behind every happy family photo, there's a version of the story waiting to be told, or worse, waiting to be buried. When the final scene fades and we see Jacinta dancing alone in the rice field, what are we supposed to feel? Pity? Relief? Maybe even resentment? But maybe that's the point. Inago Mong Lahat Sa Akin isn't trying to wrap things up in neat resolution. It doesn't give us closure, it gives us consequences. Everyone in this family tried to survive in their own way. Clarita ran, Almeda prayed, Jacinta stayed. And when the truth finally surfaced, no one was truly freed. In many ways, Jacinta is one of the most tragic characters in Philippine cinema, not because she was evil, but because she was silenced, overlooked, forced to live in the shadow of someone else's suffering. What makes her story even more devastating is that it mirrors the reality of many Filipina daughters, praised for being selfless but punished for wanting something of their own. It's also worth noting the real-life connection behind the scenes. Director Carlos Sigonreina directing his mother, Armida Sigonreina, in the role of Almeda. That casting choice adds a layer of intimacy and tension that you can feel in every frame. It's as if the family on screen and the family behind the camera are both confronting the same generational ghosts. Ultimately, Inago Mong Lahat Sa Akin reminds us that what is buried doesn't stay buried. That silence when passed from one generation to the next only creates more damage, and that healing, if it ever comes, can only begin with truth, no matter how painful it may be.